所有人都在叫，要命了！就刚刚5分钟前头，俺们叫完没几个了，现在突然之间，所有人都叫了，要死！要命了！再这样弄下去，我跟侬讲，真要出事体了，麻烦了。根治啥么呢？因为所有的人，你都不晓得这个状态到底维持到啥个情况。侬总要把个标准，或者是讲有一个具体的说法。没，侬讲看，闷了7天，到了屋里向不能出门啊。
Outbreak in the city of Shanghai, the financial capital, has now reported more than 22,000 new cases in 24 hours. And China has put the city under a strict lockdown under its zero COVID tolerance policy. Horrifying videos have emerged from Shanghai. They've been making the rounds on social media as well. Residents can be heard screaming from their windows.
就刚刚5分钟前头，俺们叫完没几个了，现在突然之间，所有人都叫了。
Under the strict policy, residents are not allowed to leave their homes even for food. The video is from one of the biggest residential compounds in the city.
Turn to its original position. The action of the other gravitational forces is necessary. The ships are interfering with the rotation of the Earth, and as these two ships get closer, the Earth will slow down until it comes to a complete stop. After completing this process, these spacecraft will slowly drift away, so that the Earth will slowly rotate clockwise again, therefore without much movement. Each is placed at one end of Earth's magnetic poles, slowing down the planet's rotation until it stops spinning completely. In the final moments of this intervention, one of the ships will be placed in front of the Sun, where it will also stop and begin to move away slowly, so that the Earth turns again clockwise. This journey will take 3 days, causing 3 days of darkness. This is the time it will take for the ship to make the journey.
So, most of us know that we are living in precarious times, okay? Not only do we have a massive supply chain shortage happening, but China just told their citizens to stockpile food and water for the next year. As they say, shit is really about to hit the fan. Shelves are scarce. There are water shortages. Crime is steadily increasing. Inflation is on the rise with no end in sight. Candace Owens, a lot of people don't like her, but guess what? The truth is the truth no matter who says it. And she's dropping a lot of knowledge, not only about Event 201, which was an exercise that was conducted just a few months prior to coronavirus. So she's on. It is inevitable, period.
I know that's a super weird question for me to ask, the title of this, but it's a serious question. It's one that you should consider, which is, what would you do if they brought the power grid down? And by they, I mean if the government purposefully brought the power grid down. And I'm not asking that question for fun. I'm asking that question because the World Economic Forum is predicting that a cyber pandemic, you can look this up, they've been running exercises about it this year, is inevitable. But you're probably saying, what is a cyber pandemic? It doesn't make any sense. Like, what are we even talking about? Well, first and foremost, the reason I'm even paying attention to the World Economic Forum and their exercises is because they notoriously, in 2019, ran an exercise for a coronavirus pandemic that oddly all became true. I mean, we'll say it's a conspiracy theory to believe that they knew that the coronavirus pandemic was going to happen. You don't have to believe it was a conspiracy theory, or you can believe it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It's up to you. I don't really care. The point is that they made the prediction, they called it inevitable, and then it happened immediately. So for me personally, that signals to me that I should probably pay attention the next time the World Economic Forum makes a prediction and calls it inevitable. And lo and behold, they are predicting that a coronavirus pandemic, a cyber pandemic, is going to happen, and that it is once again inevitable. So if you look into the exercise that they have run this year, I believe they ran it in July. They've been meeting and talking about the cyber pandemic and what it will look like. Essentially, their idea is that they're going to have to sanitize the internet because a bug, think of this as like a coronavirus for your computer, is going to sweep globally, and the only way they're going to be able to stop this bug from infecting everything is to effectively shut down the internet, right? And they were talking about bringing down the power grid in an effort to do this. So imagine the government bringing down the power grid, and you would not have access to anything that required an electrical charge. If this sounds crazy, dystopian, and like a nightmare to you, first and foremost, this happens in other countries, right? Obviously, in Cuba, when the government needs to stop people from communicating, they just bring down the power grid, right? When the uprisings were happening in Cuba, I believe that was earlier this year. Coronavirus time feels like, I don't know if it was end of last year or early this year. They just brought down the entire electrical grid. But of course, Western nations would never do something like that. If they do it, it's because they need to do it, not because they're becoming evil communist dictators, but because they would need to do it for our benefit. They were talking about the government bringing down the power grid. And until they come up with a vaccine, I'm not kidding, this is their words, not mine, a vaccine of sorts for the internet, where they would be able to cleanse it and purge it of all of these things that are making it vulnerable. Among those things, they brought up Bitcoin, which is so funny, that one thing that the government can't get a handle on, that is representing a threat to them and the financial markets, their control of the financial markets, would be Bitcoin. And suddenly, in running the simulation, they realized that Bitcoin, could potentially be a problem. If you think I'm kidding, you can look this up. It is called a cyber pandemic. And it's something that every single person should be paying attention to. Just thinking about the coronavirus pandemic, it's good for us, for the internet, where they would be able to cleanse it and purge it of all of these things that are making it vulnerable. Among those things, they brought up Bitcoin, which is so funny, that one thing that the government can't get a handle on, that is representing a threat to them and the financial markets, their control of the financial markets, would be Bitcoin. And suddenly, in running the simulation, they realized that Bitcoin, could potentially be a problem. If you think I'm kidding, you can look this up. It is called a cyber pandemic. And it's something that every single person should be paying attention to. Just in case they magically get it right again, like they did about the coronavirus pandemic, it's good for us as citizens to pay attention to that and to do what we can to prepare.
Out sometimes in our lives. Maybe it was during a heavy storm, and before you knew it, the lights were out. As a kid, it could even be kind of exciting. Luckily, the power always comes back on eventually. But what if something big happened, like something big enough to cause a global blackout? What would happen? If you guys enjoy this video at any point, make sure to subscribe and drop a like down below. For this video, let's try to hit 1,500 likes. Immediately after you first lose power, things would be fine. It would be just like any other power outage people have ever experienced. You would need to rough it a little bit, but surviving would be no issue. So after days start to pass, people would begin to see the effects. Those that would still be able to manage would be the ones who were prepared for such an event. Stockpiled food and water would easily be able to allow people to last a week without power. Those who aren't so prepared would need to find a place to get food. Maybe a local grocery store would still have items left on the shelves, but it wouldn't last very long. Those who have power generators running will soon discover that it is far too expensive and impractical to maintain. Governments, however, will need to use generators to power radio towers, some mobile towers, and other telephone exchanges. So as the time for the blackout gets longer and longer, the more unrealistic it is to happen in the real world. A blackout lasting this long could only be caused by a powerful solar storm, but is super unlikely. So by week 4, panic would start to set in. Most people's reserve supplies would begin to run out, and they would need to find a way to get clean water and food. Hunting is, of course, an option, as well as finding a freshwater reservoir and boiling the water to filter it. But no matter what, people would start to die in huge numbers by this point because so many rely on medical care that would start to become more difficult to keep up without power. Neighbors and relatives would need to band together for survival, using whatever skills the groups have to hunt and stay alive. Winter months would be especially difficult without working heaters, stoves, and eventually gas-powered vehicles, making organized groups even more vital. So this is the absolute worst case scenario, a global blackout lasting a year or more. This would have absolutely catastrophic effects on the population and life as we know it. Surviving this long would be very difficult because all the grocery stores, gas stations, and any shops that sell items people would use would be empty, completely looted of anything that has potential value. Some estimates go as high as 90% of the population dying off. Almost no government facilities would still be operating at this point. Aside from a bunker for officials to live in, hospitals, clinics, and government offices would all be closed. It would truly be survival of the fittest. You see, we unknowingly rely on power for so many aspects of our life. And without it, most people simply wouldn't be able to survive. Thanks for watching.
Of these rumors of wars. All right, so as of 7:13 p.m. Eastern time, that's the Sleeping Giant time right now, it's 11:13. Lewis is 3 hours late. No, I'm not 3 hours late. I was waiting for the updates to come. I post the same video on Twitter around 7:13 or 7 o'clock. So I was just waiting for the updates. As of 7:13 p.m. Eastern time, Sleeping Giant time, on Thursday, April 14, the city of Kyiv, the capital of that country, is being heavily impacted by the Bear Army. Ain't nobody talking about this. I guarantee huge explode are heard near the G quarter. This cannot be the headquarters. I mentioned this at the early in the morning. I posted a video and I said that the Bear is going to launch somewhere in that area. We're talking about the capital, and it's a possibility. The head, Quairter. I even spelled it for you guys. So
in Shanghai, drones tell people to stay home. Control your soul's desire for freedom, it says, as more cities double down with restrictions.
这个是正常人叫，完了终于200人，所有人都在叫，要命了！就刚刚5分钟前头，俺们叫俺没几个人，现在突然之间，所有人都叫了，要死！
Social media showing videos of protests over food and medicine, a supermarket ransacked. At a building where residents have been locked down for 2 weeks, they shout, "We only want supplies. Why are you beating people?" Tens of thousands of asymptomatic people being corralled into mass quarantine centers. In some cases, children have been separated from their parents, triggering public outcry.
要命了！再这样弄下去，我跟你讲，真要差事体了，麻烦了。根治啥么呢？因为所有个人，你都不晓得这个状态。